Venezuela President Nicolás Maduro demands the United States to not interfere in the nation's internal affairs and stay out of the controversy over the Guayana Essequiba. In Guatemala, thousands reject the approval of the state's revenue and expenditure budget for the year 2024. In Palestine, the Israeli aggression against civilians continues. More than 45 Palestinians were killed in the latest Zionist attacks in Khan Yunis. Hello, welcome to From the South. I'm Luis Alberto Matos from the TeleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. In Venezuela, President Nicolás Maduro demanded that the United States stay out of the controversy over the Guayana Essequiba. The President of Venezuela, in a message to the White House, reaffirmed that the only valid instrument for the resolution of the territorial dispute is the Geneva Agreement, ratified by the Venezuelan people in the consultative referendum. In this context, Maduro celebrated that the participation in Sunday's electoral exercise exceeded 51%, demonstrating the social organization in defense of the territory under claim. In this regard, the head of state recognized the level of patriotic conscience of the Venezuelan electorate and the high level of consensus regarding the country's historical position in the territorial dispute. President Nicolás Maduro affirmed that the country's electoral system is the fastest and most reliable in the world.
How lucky we Venezuelans are to have an electoral system that is totally technological, fully guaranteed, secure, the most secure in the world, unique in the world. The work of Tibisay Lucena, eternal glory to her memory. Tibisay Lucena, a beloved woman of Venezuela. It was very fast to vote with.
Likewise, the Venezuelan president congratulated the Venezuelan people for their participation in the consultative referendum held on Sunday.
It was a very different vote from all the ones we have done. It is a very different vote. We have voted 30 times in 24 years. 30 times we have voted, and this is the most exciting vote that I remember as a personal experience. There you have this Sunday. I congratulate the people of Venezuela for this historic and heroic day.
At the same time, the head of state denounced the campaigns of the enemies of Venezuela against the holding of the consultative referendum on the Essequibo.
The enemies of Venezuela and of the historical rights of the Essequibo, who want to harm it and try to stain and cloud the tremendous results of the consultative referendum, have said two things since last night. One, that 2 million people voted, and then Wikipedia goes and makes it official. That is, it seems that Wikipedia is actually the CNE. Well, let then Wikipedia organize the next elections. Let Wikipedia organize the next presidential elections. Done, okay, cool. Wikipedia, keep it up, you're doing fine. The other big line that they are trying to position is that the results are not binding. I already answered that today at noon during the state ceremony at the headquarters of the National Electoral Council. But let me just ask Wikipedia. Wikipedia, dear Wikipedia. If the results are not binding, why are you getting so nervous? If they are not binding, why did you and ExxonMobil and the enemies of Venezuela, both internal and external, and Guyana, why did you all go to the International Court of Justice looking for its suspension, if they are not binding? And not important. Of course they were important, very important, and very much binding, more than binding. Yesterday's referendum and the decisions taken by the Venezuelan people represent a compulsory popular mandate, more than binding.
In Guatemala, a new front is open against the administration of President Alejandro Yamatei. Thousands of citizens rejected the approval of the state's revenue and expenditure budget for the year 2024. From different sectors have asked the national president to veto the decree. They affirm that the consequences could be so very serious that it would even lead to a difficult a default of the public debt, giving way to the country falling into default. The ancestral authorities also protested this Monday against the ruling. They assured that the budget affects the welfare and rights of millions of families, taking resources away from education and health to give them to obscure non-governmental organizations and to deputies and officials. In Mexico, the fifth cycle of peace talks between the government of Colombia and the National Liberation Army began. In this regard, the Mexican Foreign Ministry issued a communique reiterating its permanent commitment to the promotion of peace and security in the region. It was reported that both parties will continue to be accompanied by delegations from countries such as Brazil, Chile, Cuba, Norway, and Venezuela, in addition to a representation of the UN Secretary General and the Colombian Bishops' Conference. The participants emphasized their hope that this new round of negotiations will open the way to a definitive and lasting solution to the Colombian conflict. Peru's Constitutional Court ruled on Monday on a habeas corpus petition in favor of former President Pedro Castillo. The former President of Peru, Castillo, spoke this Monday in a judicial hearing held almost a year after his departure from power. During the public hearing of the plenary of the Constitutional Court, Castillo ratified that on December 7, 2022, he was arrested under the pretext of having committed the crime of flagrancy. The president also pointed out that the Attorney General of the nation, Patricia Benavides, is being investigated for presumably being the leader of a criminal organization. Andrónico Rodriguez, president of the Senate of the plurinational state of Bolivia, called for dialogue to solve the blockades in Chapare. Rodriguez is currently acting as head of state, while President Luis Arce takes part in the Mercosur summit to be held in Brazil. From the Casa Grande del Pueblo, the president of the Senate acknowledged the legitimate nature of the Chapare transporters' protests and demanded explanation from the relevant ministers. After expressing his concern for the people in the conflict area, Rodriguez called for a dialogue to discuss solutions. On Monday, the Haitian Ministry of Health registered 729 cases of dengue fever, mostly in the west of the country. Health authorities analyzed 6,643 suspected cases with a positivity rate of 11%. The highest number of cases is registered in the West and Grand Anse departments, with 237 and 127 infected. For the moment, the Ministry of Health has not confirmed any death related to the disease. The World Health Organization estimates that every year some 50 million people are infected with the disease and 500,000 of them are at risk of contracting hemorrhagic dengue fever, which is potentially more deadly. Let's take a short break, but remember you can join us on TikTok at TeleSUR English, where you will find news in different formats, news updates, and much more. Other stories coming up. Stay with us. Welcome back from the South. On Tuesday in Palestine, local media highlighted that despite the gradual restoration of the communications and electricity services in Gaza, the Israeli siege was maintained from early hours. In this sense, the authorities affirmed that the reconnection of Gaza with the world allows to show the genocide of the Israeli occupation army in the Gaza Strip. On the other hand, the Ministry of Health confirmed the Zionist forces attacked civil populations in Khan Yunis and Rafah and other areas in the south of the Gaza Strip, with a preliminary toll of 45 people killed and about 125 wounded. Massive internet outages are reported by telephone companies across the Gaza Strip as a result of the unprecedented escalation of Israeli bombardment, leading many to believe that an intensification of hostilities on the ground is imminent. Our correspondent in Gaza, Nur Harasin, has the details.
A scary situation here on the ground in Gaza with the renewed cutting of networks and all cell phone networks here in the Gaza Strip. Earlier in the day, actually, one of the main network companies here in Gaza said that the internet and the lines and the cell phone lines will cut on the Gaza Strip. And specifically on Gaza City. However, apparently there is no internet, no connection in all of the areas in the Gaza Strip, and this is something very bad because people do feel whenever there is cutting of the networks, it means that something bad is gonna happen for Palestinians. And looking at what is happening here on the ground in Gaza, you can tell that they are expecting wide-scale ground invasion in Khan Yunis city tonight since the very early hours of this morning. And yes, we have been hearing clashes, continuous Israeli shelling on the on Deir al-Balah, specifically on southern Deir al-Balah, which is a wide street that links between Deir al-Balah and Khan Yunis. This is the latest from here on the ground in Gaza. Noor Harazin, TeleSUR, Gaza.
The World Health Organization denounced that Israel has given them 24 hours to withdraw their medical supplies from southern Gaza. The Director General of the WHO, Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus, claimed on Monday that the Israeli army gave an order to withdraw in the next 24 hours their supplies from the medical warehouse they have located in the southern Gaza Strip. Israeli authorities deny having given the evacuation order and demand precision. However, the head of the organization called for civilians and civilian infrastructure, including hospitals and humanitarian facilities, to be protected as mandated by the laws of war. On Monday, the presidents of Iran, Sayed Ibrahim Raisi, and Cuba, Miguel Diaz-Canel, met in Tehran, the Persian capital, and agreed on the creation of a global front for the defense of Palestine. During the visit of the Cuban head of state, the first in 20 years by a president of the island, the presidents who condemned the U.S. interventions reiterated that the Palestinian people are defending their land. They coincided in questioning the role of international humanitarian organizations in the face of the brutal Zionist aggression. The Iranian head of state added that it is urgent to correct the existing world order, while his Cuban counterpart reaffirmed the urgent need for global mobilization. In Palestine, most of those killed by Israel bombs are minors, while hundreds of thousands suffer the traumatic consequences of the war.
Many of the bodies in the plastic bags belong to children, children of mothers whose premature life were taken without any kind of regret. Children whose bodies were pulled from the rubble of buildings hit by Israeli airstrike that targeted a densely populated residential area.
We are from the Sayed 2 neighborhood. The street was completely destroyed. I pulled my brother's body out of the rubble. My grandmother and my mother were also pulled out from under the rubble. My brother's name was Mohammed Khalid Zeta.
Saad is one of the many little Palestinians who will be forever marked by the war. In tears, he bids farewell to his brother, who was killed under the walls of what was once his home. Sadly, these images are not the exception. Stories like Saad are multiplying throughout the Gaza territory. According to the Palestinian Ministry of Health and UNICEF, over 6,000 Palestinian children have been killed by the bombing of Israeli occupation.
Since today, Saturday morning, we have received a large number of casualties, mostly children. There are more than 15 bodies of children of 2, 8, and even 9 years of age. These innocent children are being bombed. Their bodies are in front of us, and we can see them. They were bombed while they were safe in their homes.
This infanticide is not an accepted consequence of the part of Israel, given that the attacks deliberately target 130 health institutions and put 20 hospitals and 46 health centers out of service, kill 280 health personnel in several regions of Gaza, and are daily bombing residential areas where many children live.
We now have a second short break, but before we invite you to join our WhatsApp community for our English-speaking audience, you can scan the QR code on screen to join directly and share the link to reach more people. constant news coverage of Latin America and the Caribbean as well as the rest of the world. Staying connected and informed with TeleSUR. Found short break, don't go away. Welcome back from the south. In Doha, the capital of Qatar, Gulf Cooperation Council Summit opens, where the Gaza conflict is expected to be at the top of the agenda. In the presence of the leaders of Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, the United Arab Emirates, Kuwait, Oman, and Turkey, the Emir of Qatar, Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani, delivered the opening speech of this meeting. The event attracts special regional and global attention for several reasons in the current Middle East context. 3 of its members are signatories of the normalization agreement with Israel, some of them suspended after the genocidal operation against Gaza. And the Emir is the host who has led the humanitarian truce agreements and the president of Turkey who will sue Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu before international courts. Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan on Monday met with Qatar's Emir Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani in Doha. Erdogan and the delegation led by Al Thani took part in the 9th meeting of the Turkey-Qatar High Strategic Committee. The meeting reviewed all aspects of Turkish-Qatari relations and discussed ways to further deepen cooperation between the two countries in various fields. The leaders also exchanged views on regional and global issues, including the Israeli attacks on Gaza and the occupied Palestinian territories. Later on, the two leaders presided over the signing ceremony of the agreements between Turkey and Qatar. Erdogan will also attend the 44th summit of the Gulf Cooperation Council in Doha on Tuesday. On Monday, the Chancellor of Germany, Olaf Scholz, received Brazilian President Luiz Inácio Lula Silva at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs on the occasion of government consultations between the two countries. The German Chancellor urged all parties to find a way to close the long-negotiated trade deal between the European Union and the South American bloc, Mercosur. The Brazilian president, alluding to the trade agreement, said he will not give up on the trade deal and asked the European Union to decide if it is really interested in sealing it. The EU and Mercosur agreed on the broad outlines of a possible free trade agreement in June 2019 after 2 decades of tough negotiations, but they still have to add the final details to the deal. The European Commission, negotiating on behalf of the 27 EU countries and Brazil, which currently shares Mercosur, had high hopes of sealing the agreement definitely at a meeting to be held in Rio de Janeiro on December 7th. Egypt's space agency chief has held cooperation with China in the field of space technologies, including establishing Egypt's Satellite Assembly Center and building a remote sensing satellite. The CEO of the Egyptian Space Agency, Sherif Sedki, said in an interview with the China Global Television Network that Egypt's cooperation with China in the field of space technology has been successful with significant knowledge transfer and capacity building. On Monday, China helped Egypt send a remote sensing satellite into orbit from the Jiuquan Satellite Launch Center in northwest China. The satellite will be used in Egypt's land and resource utilization, water conservancy, agriculture, and other fields.
So using the satellite, we can monitor the urban development. We can determine the changes in the water level in the river line, which is very important for us. We can monitor the agriculture, so we can determine the crop distribution across the country, which means that we can build applications on the images, which means that we can task whatever we need within the country and within the region also. We can also serve Africa with this satellite. The resolution of the satellite, it's quite high as compared to the previous civilian satellites that we have. So having a 2-meter resolution will serve a broad sector of interest for the different governmental entities and for the different users of the satellite imagery.
Likewise, Sheriff Sedki stated that this project is the beginning of the collaboration with China.
The knowledge transfer that we have seen from the Chinese side is really marvelous, and we greatly appreciate it. So this project is very successful. So it was a very good capacity building experience for us. Actually, we consider this project as the start of the collaboration with China. And actually, we are looking forward to deepening this collaboration and considering more capitalization on the experience that we gained from Masr 2 and from the AIT. So together we can just do more deepening of technology transfer and more work on different types of satellites. And that's what our future plans, and that's what we are planning to discuss together with the Chinese part, just to continue this collaboration for the benefit of both countries, China and Egypt.
We have come to the end of this news brief, but before saying goodbye, we want to thank our Caribbean audience, especially the audience of Trinidad and Tobago. We are pleased to share our newscasts and continue to provide an alternative news source of the latest world events. You can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. You can also join us on our social media on Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. For TeleSUR English, I'm Luis Alberto Matos. Thank you for watching.